Hey guys, it's Max. Welcome back to my studio. Hey, I had some response. I had a few questions to my video from a couple days ago about true yield. Anyway, so I'm going to try to answer a couple of questions. And then also I want to talk about this a little bit more. So I appreciate the questions. One person said, why do we even need a rule of thumb? He said, I don't understand the confusion in this or why you need a rule of thumb every month. Defiance posts the distribution. It tells you how much was ROC. As long as you reinvest the ROC, you can expect positive returns over time. Right now, and he mentioned the amounts. Yes, and that is something I thought about. Let's look at those real quick. So they give you a form like this every month for each fund, or every month that they have return of capital. Hopefully they don't have it all the time. But in any event, they do a lot of the time. And it tells you exactly how much is return of capital. So I actually downloaded all three of these, and I'm going to show you why I didn't do it that way in a second. But I thought about that. That's a good idea and a fair question. I was advised a while back to make my videos easier to understand and, and kind of just give the big picture. And that's enough for most people. But I got some good questions on this, and I'd like to go a little bit more in depth. Okay. But the reason I didn't use the 19A is because the return of capital is mostly just an accounting thing. It's just a number. It's a game that the accountants play. And they try to get that number as high as possible. And that's fine. It's the higher the numbers, the less taxes we pay. It lowers our tax liability. But in my opinion, it doesn't always reflect reality. And I think it would cause you to hold out too much, especially if the accountant's doing his job. Like I say, I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. Okay, so, but also the other reason, besides the reason I wasn't sure it was that reliable, because it's an accounting number and it's not really the trading number. But the main reason yes, of course we can look at that after the fact. This is trying to predict in advance, when a fund first comes out, this is trying to say, okay, I think this is what I'm going to be able to clear from this fund. Or if you have a portfolio of funds and you're looking forward a year, yeah, we know how much return of capital has been out. And yes, you could assume it just remains at the same rate. Absolutely. This is just like maybe you think of it as a budgeting, or think of it as like a preseason ranking. They give the football team, you like a preseason ranking that, it's ranked first in the conference. Well, once the season gets going, you can throw that out the window, but it's just generally something to it's just something to look at. Okay. So, the way I did it is the way I made the index is I used Global X and JP Morgan and their distribution policy as kind of the gold standard. The only two differences between all these funds is the distribution policy, how they pay the distributions, and then also the time frame that they sell the options in. That's really that's the two main differences. So once you understand that, it helps you to understand how these funds work and to budget on how much you really might get. So if a Global X fund comes out and they say they're going to pay 12%, well, yeah, it's going to pay 12%. But because that's their, that's the way they do things. That's their brand. But, if you have a yield max fund coming out and on some new underline, and there is a bunch coming out, and, somebody ran the IV on it and said it's going to pay 112% or something. Okay, well, more likely you're going to actually earn a fraction of that once you normalize for all the factors and you take the movement of price out of it, the movement of the stock. That includes the movement down too, though, but you take the movement up out. A lot of these returns that you see on these high-flying stocks like Coinbase, a lot of that is derived from the actual underlying moving up. But on the Global X fund, I'd say, more likely, be thinking maybe 20-25% is actually what you're going to, think of as your take-home pay. The fund managers aren't going to tell you. They're going to, they're going to say you need to reinvest it all. And because that's fiduciary responsibility, in your best interest. That's not just on these types of funds. It's always good on any type of dividend fund. It's always your first option, if you can do it, is to reinvest the dividends. That's always the first. That's kind of your default. But then depending on other, factors, you may not do that. Once the fund's been out for a couple months, we can look at the return of capital, but this is the budget out over the next year without knowing the future. This is a number you can look at. So all I did was I made an adjustment for the time frame. So all that my number says is, it says how much would this how would this fund do if JP Morgan was running it? JP Morgan, with their distribution policies, they hold half the premium out, right? Well, these JP Morgan just uses monthly options. And the thing is, it's not fair to just hold half the premium out if you have a strategy that does daily or weeklies. Because daily or weeklies are a lot more profitable, but they're also more risky. Anyway, so I had to make an adjustment for the dailies and weeklies. In any event, on a monthly, basically the two long-term read is on a monthly, you take half the money, half the dividend to defend the NAV. On a weekly, it's 3/4, and on a daily, it's 87.5%. You keep 12.5%. Okay. Now that's just how the index ranks him. That's not what I'm recommending. So this guy said, "Hey Max, I'm confused. Based on your calculations, are these the true yield of the funds is within the ranges you mentioned, or are you saying that this is the percentage you need to reinvest?" No, this is my guesstimate to what these things will truly yield. I really think, when it's all said and done, this is a pretty good Coney at 28%. I'm pretty comfortable with that over the next year. It could be a lot higher than that if Coinbase goes up. It could be a lot lower than that if Coinbase goes down. Other things being equal, just the income part of it, if you stripped all that out, I'd say, 28, 30%, something like this. And if your fund is on here and it's super low, I'm not saying it's just a formula. It will likely do better than this. It's just, very well can do better than this. This is just a formula. It's like when you look at the Blue Book value of your car, and if you've taken good care of your car, it's always way too low, and you're going, no way I would sell it for that much. So that's kind of how this is too. But this is a conservative way if you're trying to budget. These are good numbers you might want to use for budgeting. So the rest of the story is, when Jay Pestrichelli said a long time ago we needed to reinvest all of the dividends, I was thinking surely there's a way not to have to invest all of it. And so I started looking for studies to see if anyone had done a study on how much of your dividends you really need to reinvest to defend the NAV, what you could really do. And I found a good study from SBC Global. Here it is right here. I'll post a link to it. Anyway, when you look at the study, they test for different time frames and different out of the money and in the money. But the middle line is pretty much what I'm looking for in each study, because that means that the NAV has stayed the same. On that one, on this chance, they had to reinvest only 1/4. Okay, but on this one, it's they had to reinvest 1/3 to keep that. That's showing it with the 1/3 reinvestments. Your NAV goes straight sideways over 10 years. You could see these funds, if you do one of these funds and don't reinvest anything using this methodology over 10 years, it was broke. Even if you reinvest half your money on this fund, it was still down. The NAV anyway was still down, 35% or something. But anyway, when you look at all these studies, basically 2/3 is the number. You have to reinvest 2/3, but you get to keep 1/3 of the dividend. That study right there says 2/3 also, the 2/3 line. Yeah. So in any event, and people are asking me, so are you saying now we have to go by this new number? Because the new number is higher. It's 87.5% is what you would have to reinvest. No, this is just an index. It's just an index, and it's just it's not meant to actually be reinvested. In fact, I tested what you would do if you had used that number, and you would have way over withheld. So, and I'll show you that in just a second. Like I say, you don't have to reinvest 87.5%. It's just an index. It's just something, what I was thinking is there's people that buy these funds and they hear that they yield 50% a year, and they don't understand that the yield isn't the same thing as total return. So they're thinking, okay, 50% a year in 2 years, I'll be paid back, right? Well, no. And actually on the QQQY, the little number that my index came up with is 8.7% per year. I think that's pretty good. But, that's about what you could expect to make after everything's said and done. I think that's great. That's 60% more than bonds make, and bonds pay a lot right now. But anyway, so more likely you would pay yourself back in 12 or 13 years. I wish the funds had to use a realistic number like that. They couldn't advertise 50% when you're really going to make 8%. That's all I'm saying. So like another example, if you invest in Tesla and they advertise Tesla at 70%, or they'll show you the last month's yield, and you're thinking 70%, I just need to have this thing for a year and a half. I mean, I am in. And then it's a free money machine. And it would be great if that were the case, but that's not the way it works out. And it's not that it can't work out like that. Occasionally you could buy one of these funds that will actually make what the number they're saying is, but the stock has to appreciate a bunch also. You're really making most of that money for stock appreciation, not from the option premium. But anyway, that works. If you can find one like that, money's money. It all works. Total return's all that counts. So, but something like in Tesla, instead of 70%, budget 20%. So you're thinking, or, if somebody watches my channel, I'm going to start putting the true yield numbers out on everything. So realistically, if, you had Tesla, everything's being equal, you might be able to pay yourself back in 3 years. And that's pretty aggressive right there. The rule of 72, right? So if you could really make 23, like the index says, and I know they haven't made that much total return lately, but it's just an index. But that's what they should make in an average year. So you could do that for 3 years in a row. That would, then you would have your money back. So it's not like these things can't get your money back and can't turn into money machines if managed right in retirement. But that's why it's important to be realistic about it. And I wasn't trying to rain on anyone's parade or I know there's people that love these and that have a lot of faith in them. And I had their fund rated at 10% or something, and they're probably like, I've been making 20, 30%. And I get that, that's good. The number's probably overly conservative, but I think that's all right. Cause it's just a number. It's just a preseason ranking. I'd really like to see the industry adopt something like this, so people that watch this channel and the other YouTube channels, all these people understand how it works and know all this. But I'm saying just the average Joe out there who doesn't watch YouTube and who, doesn't have, doesn't belong to 5 different Discord servers or whatever. Anyway, I think it'd be an improvement in the industry. So they used to say I was a Defiance propagandist. They probably still do, but realize what I just said. I just said that Defiance, you're going to get about 12 cents on the dollar from Defiance and about 25 cents on the dollar from YieldMax by the time it's all said and done at the end of the day. So if I was a Defiance propagandist, I would have never said this. And obviously I'm not. I just want people to be educated. I think Defiance is one of the better choices out there. It's the best one in the daily category because its only competition is Watch Hill or Round Hill. I always give them except Round Hill that does the weekly options. And I don't hate Round Hill or whatever, but to me, they haven't been getting the return. To me, they haven't been performing as well, I should say. Now I know they have potential to, and I know they have exposure to overnight, appreciation and stuff. And so we'll see. The jury's out on it. But I think at this point, out of the daily ones, I mean, it's IWMY and QQQY is it. You heard Jay say the other day that there's real guys that were in real estate, and they said they haven't been able to get returns like this outside of real estate. And he was talking about I believe he was talking to the coach, and they was talking about the yield max ones. But anyway, they all return the same. They're probably talking about Coney, where the NAV's going up and they're making tons of premium at the same time. But still, yeah, it's been a heck of a deal. It's been a heck of a deal. But yeah, I really would like to see the industry adopt a standard like this. Where they have to advertise the lower number. Doesn't have to be my formula. Maybe my formula is overly conservative, but a number that shows you what realistically you might have, a chance in hell of making. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate this. I've been trying to record this video for a couple of days, but I kept making bad copies, or I kept wanting to record it again and again because I would forget to say stuff. But I think this one's a winner. I'm going to go ahead and let it rip. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me how you guys budget. I know other people budget. Oh, one other thing. Here's the best part of the presentation. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the first guy that made the comment about the 19A. Okay. So here's what I did. I showed you the 19A. So I put the 19A right here and just, so IWMY has had 76% return of capital, triple QY 52%, JEPY 86.94%. So I put that right there. Well, and then I did four different ways of deciding how to defend the NAV and to decide which one's the most accurate. So I took the guy's suggestion. Why not just use the 19A? I think his name was Richard, and it was a great suggestion. So when we did use the 19A, this is this is how much IWMY started at. That's what it closed at yesterday. That's paid $7.12 a dividend so far. If you looked at the 19A, you would require $5.42 reinvestment back in the NAV to defend the NAV, right? Okay, so if you did that, unfortunately, it would be 72 cents too much. The idea is that you want the NAV to stay right at 20. You don't want to overpay yourself. You don't want to underpay yourself. I mean, that's the idea. So, but anyway, if you use the 19A method, you'd be about 4% over on IWMY, but on triple QY, you would be 5% under, but on JEPY, you'd be pretty much right on the money. So it's not the worst way to do it. Let me show you. So here's 87.5%, which is how the index does it. It says, like I say, and I'm not saying you should do that, but that's how the index figures it. Well, anyway, I'm just saying if we went back to the life of these funds and we withheld 87.5%, we would have withheld way too much because we want to be right at 20, right? And when we need to defend the NAV, we don't want to over defend the NAV. So way too much. That's probably the worst way to do it. And like I say, I'm not suggesting we do it that way. I always just want to see if the index got it close. So then I tested the 66%, which is what that study said that I showed you. Now the study didn't factor in the daily, but anyway, disregarding all that, the daily versus monthly versus weekly, if you just forget about all that, and you just do 66% across the board, well, that was actually pretty darn close. The 66% right here, you would have been 4 cents too much on IWMY, 19 cents not enough on triple QY from defending the NAV, and right on the money at JEPY. So 66% is still a legit metric and still probably a decent way to do it. Now, here's the way you do it in real life, though, in my opinion. If you buy it on, let's say you buy it on day one, you buy it at 20, you just always, if by the end of the first month after you get your dividend, if the NAV's at 19, you put $1 out of your dividend back in. You just always keep your NAV at 20. Anyway, if you did it that way, which is, I'm just calling that the real life method, where you just reinvest as needed, you would have had to put $5.08 of the $7.12 dividend in back into the fund. Okay. And that would have taken you right back to 2038, which was the opening price. 2014 was this fund's opening price. So you need 495 in triple QY, and in JEPY, you would need 366. Okay. So that leaves you some money, some actual real profit, not quotation quotation marks, air quotation marks, income, not that. Real actual income, profit. And that amount is right here. And this is the year-to-date yield. Okay, now these funds have been 0.7 of a year they've been out. So then I annualized it. So IWMY at an annualized rate's making 17%, or the real rate's making 12% right now. So, and then I went back and I looked at the true yield number that I give these funds, and I'm seeing how close the true yield number is to the real number that it's actually got. So the true yield number was 11.9, and right now we're at 17 points. So it's low. The true yield number is too low on that one. It's 8 points on QQQY, and right now we're at 15. So it's too low on that one. And on JEPY, it's also a little too low. So anyway, the 87.5%, that metric, whatever, you don't have to withhold that much. That was it's just a way I'm making an index. Anyway, and you can see the index is a little bit overly conservative, but since it's for budgeting, I like that. I like the idea of being overly conservative for budgeting. If you're looking at trying to live off this money in retirement. Okay, my next video, I'm going to continue with this theme, but we're going to talk about the 4% rule. Now, the 4% rule is a money management rule in retirement, or a wealth management rule, saying that you can spend 4% of your wealth in retirement. So if you have $1 million, you could spend $40,000 a year. So if you have $1 million and it's in Apple stock, you could theoretically cash in $40,000 worth of Apple stock to live off of, and you should be all right. That's according to this rule. It's just a rule. In any event, it can tie in with these high yield funds in some pretty interesting ways. And Jay mentioned it in Coach's interview yesterday. So I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit in the next video. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for sticking around. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I will be back later.